Hello there, friends, and welcome to the Paranatural Podcast. Ben here with a couple of things to cover before we get into the episode. The first thing is that if you have not noticed yet, this is Hinsdale Part 2. I know how podcast players behave, so it might have autoplayed or you might not have noticed or what have you. So if you're listening to this and you have not yet listened to Part 1, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that one and then come back and join us again here. It will make a whole lot more sense and be a whole lot easier to follow and therefore be a lot more enjoyable if you do that. The second thing I would like to add is if you enjoy our content, then we really need your help. Small indie podcasts like this one only grow with the help of listeners like you. So if you're willing to give us a hand, just go to your whatever podcast player you're listening to this on right now and leave us a 5-star rating or a rating and review if you're so inclined. Those really, really do help us out. They help the show grow. They help us reach more people and help us bring a little bit more joy into the world. Now, without further ado, the Hinsdale House, Part 2. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but up till now, Phil has kind of not been present in these stories. And that's because Phil just was not home very often. So, as we've established, their marriage was not great. And the commute from Hinsdale to Buffalo was a fucking long one. So Phil just kind of opted to stay with his in-laws a lot. And only came home on certain weekends. And Clara says that when he was home, things in the house were extraordinarily tense. Now, at first, Clara did not feel comfortable with telling Phil about all the weird shit that was happening because of their tense marriage and the fact that their communication was absolutely shit. And it was things like there was no trust between them, no nothing, because according to Clara, Phil would spend a lot of time out drinking and had somehow been caught not being where he said he was going to be. And she noticed that like a lot less money was coming home. And yeah, you're making a very obscene gesture, but that was the first thought I had too, was that old Philly boy had a girlfriend. So.
All signs point to it.
It kind of does.
Phil's a dick.
Now, despite all of this, she did eventually tell Phil about what had been going on. And, like, to her surprise, he didn't laugh at her and he didn't call her crazy. He did, however, like, try to offer up, like, you know, more skeptical, like, well, maybe it was this or maybe it was that kind of explanations. But he didn't laugh and he didn't call her crazy. And he did note that even though he wasn't around to see any of the stuff happening, he did actually feel something when he was there at the house. Something that made him uncomfortable. Something dark. So he might not have been like seeing a lot of paranormal stuff, but he definitely was, he could feel something was wrong, you know. Which, just as an editorial side note, what kind of man is leaving his fucking family in that kind of situation? He's like, no, this house is creepy and I feel yucky here. I'm just going to leave. You guys fucking good luck.
That's what I would do.
I don't think I like Phil very much.
Yeah, Phil's like a Jake. Deal with your own problems. It ain't bugging me.
You're full of shit.
Play with this Ouija board a little bit. See if you can get at some friends.
Right.
So it doesn't mess with you too much.
Right.
Take the salt, make a circle around yourself. Don't move. Phil had the right idea.
Stay in the salt. You'll be fine. But Dad, what if I get thirsty? Stay in the salt. I gotta go. I got a date tonight. Don't tell your mother.
He's been sleeping in church. His He felt the bad juju, but he just didn't want to be around.
Yeah, he just bitched out like a motherfucker.
Attaboy. That's how you survive.
I mean, okay, that's a fair point.
But they're like, hey, gang, let's solve this mystery. And Phil's like, hey, gang, have fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to be drinking salt holy water and peeing circles around myself.
Phil's like, I am 8 minutes late for happy hour, and there's a redhead at the bar. I gotta go.
Redhead yonder looking at me. I've heard that song. I didn't know it was wrote about Phil, but
I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. Yeah, Phil's kind of a dick. I don't think I like
the
Phil
smartest one in this story, I think.
I mean, like,
at least he's not putting his kids at risk like freaking Clara.
Isn't he, though? He's leaving them there.
Yeah, big deal. They can leave too. They got feet. Shoelace Express is a thing.
They got Lamborghinis. Hitchhike, motherfuckers. It's the 70s. Hitchhike. Yeah.
Hold up that thumb. 50-50 shot, you won't get murdered.
Stick out your thumb and ride that to safety. I gotta go.
Got a date. One of the first recorded orgies.
I'm pretty sure there were orgies way before 1970.
Recorded?
Do you count hieroglyphs?
Is there hieroglyph porn?
Oh, probably.
I know what I'm looking up at Pornhub next.
Okay, time to get back to the story. We start getting into Jake's weird fetishes. It's time to just skip that, get back to the story.
Speaking of feet.
Okay. Anyway, all of these things, the chanting, the umbrella nights, which became more and more common, actually, the disappearing people, the UFOs, all of that shit came to a head in June of 1973. That's when shit started getting real creepy. On Friday, June 29th, 1973, Clara was home alone for the first time in a long time. Phil had taken Laura to an eye doctor appointment, and the rest of the kids had decided to go along for the ride. Right? Now, Clara was doing what any parent in her situation would do, and she was just kind of enjoying the silence and the alone time, right? Now, she too had a doctor's appointment later in the afternoon, but she had some time to kill. So she decided to settle onto the couch and read a book. She'd only been reading for a few minutes when she heard the sound of a stack of papers falling over. So, you know, that fluttery sound. Now, earlier in the day, she had taken a stack of newspapers and put them on the porch for disposal, and just kind of assumed that that's what she had heard fall over. So she gets up off the couch and she goes out to the front porch to pick them up, only to find them exactly as she had left them. So she goes around the house and she's trying to figure out what the hell it was she had heard fall, and couldn't find anything. Everything was in its place. So she goes back to her book. But just as she sat down, the window about 10 feet in front of her, so across the room from the couch, slammed shut completely without warning.
Uh-oh.
Or at least she heard it slam shut.
I take back my uh-oh.
But when she got up to see what the hell had just happened, the window was still open. And so was every other window in the house. Now, having had 2 instances within a few minutes of hearing strange, unexplainable sounds, Clara was thoroughly spooked and decided to just go ahead and head to her doctor's appointment a little bit early that day.
Now we're being smart, Clara.
Now, on the 2nd of July, Phil headed back to Buffalo for work, and Clara was home with Mike and Beth. The other kids had wanted to go stay with Grandma and Grandpa.
Smart.
And they were only originally supposed to stay there for the weekend, but that kind of got extended for a little while because why the fuck would you want to go back to your haunted ass house if you could stay with grandma and grandpa?
Right.
Number one, I remember being a little kid, staying with grandma and grandpa was tits. And number two, that house fucking spooky, yo. Now, Clara, Beth, and Mike all turned in around 11 o'clock. But at 3:30, Clara was woken by a shrill scream. She rushed downstairs and found her daughter Beth lying on her back in her bed with both hands pressed to her eyes. The girl was shaking in fear. After she got Beth calmed down a little bit, Beth told Clara that she had gotten up to get a drink of water. And as she went back to bed and lay down, she felt something jump up on her stomach. She said it was something furry and thought originally that it was just one of the cats. But as the thing had moved towards her face, she had brushed it away with her arm and did it apparently pretty hard because she expected a thud from the cat either hitting the wall or the floor, but the thud never came. And at the time, both cats had been asleep upstairs with Clara.
So you only got 47 other animals to choose from.
I mean, that's fair. Now, I don't know if the raccoon and the woodchuck and the skunk lived in the house or just in the yard. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it was a gerbil that could fly.
But any of those things would still make a thud.
Gerbil, maybe not.
Maybe not much of one. Depends on how hard you throw it.
I guess we'll have to test it out. Don't be listening, PETA.
Scientifically speaking, theoretically, depends on how hard you throw it. Anyway.
Yeah.
The next morning, they found a substance outside of Beth's bedroom door.
Cocaine.
If it was the worst cocaine ever because this particular substance was a grayish green color and was slimy, but apparently had no odor. I'm not sure who decided to sniff it, but it apparently had no odor.
Coke cut with ectoplasm.
Right. Now, Clara cleaned it up and, because of course not, she didn't take any sort of sample of this substance. People, take samples. Please take fucking samples.
Going back to the little green men.
Back to Kelly Hopkinsville. Yep, yeah. Back to Kelly Hopkins. No samples. They never take samples. But anyway, as she cleaned it up, she remembered that she had seen a substance like this before.
Oh, great.
And the time she had seen it before had been on the previous April, when Beth had woken up screaming because she thought someone was in her room. Someone or something was in her room. And the next morning, they found the aforementioned slimy gray-green substance outside of Beth's door. But at the time, they had thought that it was some sort of animal shit. I guess that's fair.
I mean, if they thought it once, then why can't they think it again?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And then also, what's up with the sniffing? If I see any odd fluid goo anywhere, I'm not going to be like, it's odorless. I'm intrigued.
You make a very good point, and I think this is a good time for an impromptu paranatural PSA. People, do not sniff the ectoplasm.
Yeah, don't sniff it. Baggy it and sample that shit.
Take samples, don't sniff.
Don't consume.
This has been a paranatural PSA. Now, on July 4th, Clara was walking by Mary's bedroom. And as she did, she noticed that Mary's bedside lamp was shattered all over the floor. She went in to clean up the mess, and among the shattered pieces of lamp, she found a playing card. Now, just for shits and giggles, Jacob, would you like to guess which playing card she found laying on the floor among the shattered pieces of lamp?
The Joker.
Negative.
Ace of Spades.
That's the one. That is the one.
I love music.
Now, Clara picked up the card, didn't think much of it. She just took it with her, tucked it underneath of her alarm clock so that she would know where it was, and then when they found the deck it belonged to, they could put it back. Right? But the next morning, when she got up, she noticed that the card was gone. It was no longer tucked underneath of her alarm clock. She found it later that day on the dresser in Mary's room. Yeah. Now, again, this kind of spooked Clara, and she told Phil about it. And he did his thing, and he just kind of suggested that maybe she had moved the card and just kind of forgotten about it, or absentmindedly had carried it with her and set it down, or what have you. But that same morning, Beth had woken up with a mysterious burn on her leg. And she mentioned this burn to the family at breakfast, and her brother Mike's face kind of went real pale white.
Oh.
And he then told the family that a week prior, he had woken up with an unexplainable burn, but that he hadn't said anything because it didn't really hurt and it was gone within a few days. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Beth's burn did hurt, and she actually wound up with a scar from it. So, yeah, I don't know.
So it seems like it's more violent towards the women, huh?
Mike got a burn first, though.
Yeah.
I mean, just because he didn't have as bad a reaction to it, I don't know really how to think about that.
Go ahead.
I don't know how to think about much of this tale. Because of the fact that, like, if you take like that, right? Like, okay, it's just a couple burns. You can burn yourself without really noticing. You know. But when you put it all together, it's like, what the hell?
What's going on? Yeah.
And these are all just weird little things that have no rhyme or reason. Two of these kids get these mysterious burns. And you'd think if that was something that the spirits or whatever was in the house, or the aliens or what the fuck ever it was doing to people, then it'd be like all of them would get one. Or it would repeat somehow or something.
Or at least have something to do with the area of the house.
But they sleep in 2 different bedrooms. I mean, whatever. But it's just like it happens twice and then that's it. Nothing. The 16-year-old boy. He's seen twice by different people, and then he's never mentioned, as far as I know, again. What the shit is up with this?
Yeah.
It's just fucking weird. The UFO thing. They see it clear as fuck in the winter one day. They see it off and on throughout time, but one night it shines the house, takes off, they never see it again. Don't make no fucking sense.
Not at all.
Not even a little bit.
It's like one experience ends, another one begins.
You're 100% right.
Huh.
Now, I mean, to be fair, like a lot of this that I have in my notes, it's somewhat chronological, but not exactly.
Right.
So that does play a part in how you're perceiving it, but it's still very much like one thing after another.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really repeat patterns. It's weird.
Yeah, usually hauntings like follow some sort of area of haunting.
I mean, we're kind of used to seeing like an MO.
Yeah. Like the shadow guy. Been seen a couple of times here and there.
Yeah.
Differently, but and then the UFO, then the ectoplasm cocaine.
Right, that's just twice. They find that twice.
Yeah. And then the burns.
Yeah, it's just weird.
And I forgot to ask this earlier, but um one of the children said she came home and Clara was doing the dishes. Was it just like the mood in the air or like Clara's actual mood that seemed off?
No, see that part was Beth wrote that letter back from college,
Yeah.
and I think it was like something like her mom was asking her questions about her experiences for the book and what have you, and that was the letter she wrote. And I think she's talking about the atmosphere
Okay.
just of the whole house, because she mentions her mom being off, she mentions her sister being off.
Yeah.
Then she uses that, umbrella nights term. So she's just talking about that general feeling of something ain't fucking right here.
Right.
And talking about how, it did affect people. She noticed it affected people in the house. Things changed. People changed.
Okay.
Which is something you hear a lot of
Yeah.
when you look at like, quote unquote demonic, possessions or
poltergeist.
It's sometimes, yeah. Yep. Now, as I mentioned before, at first Mike was a little bit more, skeptical about things. And a lot of that was because, like you noticed, a lot of this stuff was focusing more on the girls. It was focusing on his sisters and on his mom. But suddenly, and for a little while, things kind of started to target Mike. So what kind of turned his mind and made him a full believer in what was going on was, as Clara tells the story, one night around 4 a.m., Clara woke up to hear her son yelling for her to come downstairs. Of this, Clara writes, quote, "There is a wide, long shelf over his bed," meaning Mike's. "On it, he keeps books, games, magazines, and what have you. Like any mother, I had warned him time and time again about the precarious pile of slick magazines perched on top of his games. But the magazines didn't fall. His chess set, which was at the very bottom of a very large pile, fell on his chest and woke him up. Sleepily pushing it to the floor, he turned over to go back to sleep. About 5 minutes later, his battleship game, which had been on top of the chess set, fell. That's when he called me. The magazines were still piled on the shelf, still precarious, but unmoved. The games beneath them lay all over the floor. Since Mike prides himself on being logical, and this was completely illogical, he was absolutely convinced that something strange was happening in the house. He kept shouting, 'But they fell on me.' All Beth and I said was, 'Join the club.'" End quote.
Oh, geez. Don't have to go die hard on it.
But what else do you say to him?
Oh, shit. It's happening to you too now.
I guess I kind of feel it because, like, he, for all intents and purposes, by this point, he is a grown man.
Yeah.
It
takes a lot for a grown man to call for
his mommy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's more of that kind of stuff in here that makes me kind of go, what the F?
It would take nothing short of an anal probe from a cactus for me calling my mommy.
But, I mean, not only is that a great point, but more to my point, the two of them saying that to him and kind of being like, dicks about it.
Yeah.
This is a grown man who had been like, not exactly telling them they're lying, but also not fully believing them.
skeptical.
So now when it happens to him, I think he deserved a little bit of,
Nobody
join the club, bud.
Nobody deserves dickatry when ghosts are involved.
I disagree.
Well, it's traumatic enough. Like, be like, oh shit, we should do something.
It's traumatic. He got hit with a board game.
That seemed to come out of nowhere.
Just wait. Traumatic is coming, my friend. Traumatic is coming.
Who's traumatic?
I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to name this ghost.
Now we know where the ectoplasm came from.
Yeah. Now, after that night, the three of them made a conscious effort to not let these strange occurrences bother them. Right? And the thinking on this was that perhaps if they got upset over the things happening, it might fuel whatever was going on. Right? You had negative emotion to a negative thing, and there you go.
Right. Add fuel to the fire, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what they did was decided that they were just going to like chill for the day. Right? So they parked their asses on the couch. They watched movies. They ate tater chips. They just chilled out for the day and tried to have a good time. When all of a sudden, Mike pointed to a row of family pictures on the wall. Like school pictures and, the family Christmas photos and what have you. And what had drawn his attention was something sticking out of one of Mary's pictures. He got up and went to look at it, and what he saw actually made him, like, yell startled out loud. And what it was a plastic letter opener, something Clara had gotten from an old coworker, was stabbed into Mary's picture. Yeah. Mike yanked the thing out and snapped it in half.
That boy Mike.
Yeah, I kind of get that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get that.
Yeah.
Protective older brother shit right there. He doesn't know exactly what to do, but this thing is getting fucking broke. Beth, having seen this, began to actually cry and asked her mother, no one, the ether, what have you, why is it picking on Mary? She isn't even here. Now, this event really bothered the family. And we're going to go right back to your point about it takes a lot for a grown-ass man to cry out for his mommy. All three of them slept in Clara's room that night.
That takes a lot.
They bunked up together that night.
Especially with Morningwood, that takes so much.
But despite that, the comfort that exists in numbers, number one, and family, number two.
Safety in numbers.
They all were still real uneasy and could sense a supernatural energy in the house around them. And this is where the quote that I read at the beginning comes from. I'm going to read it again here, just so you know where it fits. Clara wrote, quote, I wish there was some way I could convey the horror I felt as I lay in bed with my own kids, surrounded by my own pets and listening to the sounds of heavy men's footsteps downstairs, walking from one end of the house to the other all night. Whoever it was, or whatever, was wearing hard-soled boots. At least that's what they sounded like. I found myself wishing that he'd take them off. Mike kept saying, Mom, can you hear that? Aren't you scared? And I remember saying, as long as they don't start up the stairs, Mike, don't pay attention. End quote. So that's where that beginning quote actually belongs in the story, was at that night. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like as a grown man, it would be more like staying in your mother's room to make sure she's safe, or if
maybe that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't come off that way, but the story is being written by Clara.
Right.
She's a mother who will always see her children as her children.
Hero complex.
They're always little kids. They're your
always going to be your baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Clara's mother had a cousin who was a priest. His name was Father Bob.
What a name. Bobs are always badasses.
Bob spelled backwards is Bob. Now,
what's that called?
Why do you got to ask me questions that I know the answer to, but I don't
It's the same as Hannah and race car.
Taco cat.
Taco cat?
There you go. There's some fun trivia for you guys. Taco cat spelled backwards is taco cat. Anyway, on the 7th of July, Clara called her mother and asked her to see if Father Bob would come and bless the house in Hinsdale. Father Bob agreed, and he came down to the house on the 10th of July for a good old-fashioned combination cookout and house blessing. Hey, it sounds like a racket to me. If you got good barbecue, I'll come bless your house. Now, he had heard what was going on at the house, from the family as they ate their barbecue and stuff. And afterwards, he went around to do the blessing.
It's a palindrome.
There you go. Thank you, Jacob, for educating all of us and making us just a little bit smarter. I probably won't remember that in 10 minutes. Now, after Father Bob went around and did the blessing of the house, he went to Clara and told her, quote, "I don't know if I did you any good, but I didn't do you any harm," end quote.
That's what you want to hear.
Fucking gee, thanks, Father Bob.
Go, Bob. Hope you enjoyed the barbecue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thanks for nothing, you dick. Which, not only is that less than comforting, yeah, it was also wrong.
It did harm?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. It was
Fuck
wrong.
you, Bob.
And even like as I was reading that and everything, I'm like, oh, God, that's bad. That's bad. That's bad. Because, so I kind of speak from experience here. But if you go into a situation like that and you are unsure of yourself, or you're you're dismissive of what you're being told, or you're dismissive of what's causing it, or if you half-ass it for any reason or in any way, shape, and form, you gonna piss something off, and things gonna get worse. And that's what happened at the Hinsdale house. Right after Father Bob's little "I don't know if I did any good" blessing, the footsteps walking around at night, which they had only heard kind of intermittently, became constant. Like, it was like every night now. Mary began hearing loud knocking sounds in her room as she was trying to sleep. And the family would be woken up in the middle of the night by a just bone-chilling, bone-penetrating cold in the middle of the summer. In an old-ass farmhouse with no air conditioning.
That's never good.
And it would just like move over them, freeze them, wake them up, and then move on about its business. The family woke up one morning and found the screen door lying in shreds on the front porch, looking like it had been clawed by something. They would all hear things being like drugged through the house at night, but they could never figure out anything that was moved.
This bitch better not include the dog man into her story. That's my story.
We need one dog man and one Sasquatch, and we get a paranatural bingo.
Yeah. Yeah. Or telekinetic Bigfoots.
Telekinetic Lemurians and telekinetic Bigfoots and bootsteps walking around, and this shit's just getting weird, bud. Now, it wasn't just the Dandy family that had experiences there. the kids always had friends come over because apparently their friends were morons. And these kids would experience things too whenever they stayed the night. At the end of July, Mary had a friend, Susan, over and they were swimming in the pond.
Oh, not Susan.
Not Susan. Don't do it, Susie.
Susan.
They're out swimming and the girls suddenly noticed a woman dancing on the bank, up on the edge of the pond. And what they saw, they give two different descriptions of. Okay. So they both said they saw a woman. That's similar. They both said that what they saw was her like twirling and dancing up along the edge of the pond. But one of the girls describes her as having rabbit teeth. And the other says that her teeth were long and pointed.
I prefer the rabbit teeth. What is up, Doc?
Right. Now, the girls do agree on, like I said, that it was a woman, that she was dancing, and they also agree on the fact that she just simply vanished into the tall grass around the edge of the pond. So, yeah, whatever. Again, explain that. It's just kind of random and out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Multiple witnesses, some random thing, doesn't make any fucking sense.
I mean, just to add to our bingo here, a lot of the stories that I've read about witches, people will explain them like that, including the pointed teeth.
Yeah, kind of old school descriptions, for sure. But she just vanished. Why was she dancing? Do witches dance?
If they catch a kid to eat, maybe they're happy enough, yeah.
Well, she had two of them in the water. She didn't eat them.
Kids?
Well, I guess it depends on what you classify as a kid, because Beth was pretty much also a grown person at this point, and I'm assuming her friend Susan was of an age.
If not, we're going to have a talk with her.
Now, here's another weird one. Beth had a doll, which is already creepy. Dolls are creepy. This particular doll was about the size of a 2-year-old.
Great.
So, like a big-ass doll.
Like a Chucky.
And she'd had the doll for quite a while and suddenly just started to be afraid of the fucking thing. Right? And not only was she just started to be afraid of the thing, so did her sisters. So the girls took the doll out and hung it from a tree.
Great idea.
All the girls swore that after hanging the doll from the tree, it looked at them threateningly. So they cut it down from the tree. And Beth chucked it in the closet. Right?
The hell?
I know, piss off the doll, then bring it back inside, you fucking moron.
Oh, sorry we hung you. Go in the closet.
Now, since this was a large and I'm going to guess probably kind of expensive doll, Clara decided that she would rather see the doll get some use as opposed to just being chucked in the back of a closet. So she gave it to a family that she knew who had a little girl.
Dear God.
That's fair. That's fair. That is fair. And the very next sentence in my notes says, it is probably fair to think that this was a dick move on Clara's part.
Yeah, no shit.
But to give her just a little bit of credit, people in the town by this point had heard about the house, right? And like the weird shit going on there. The paper had ran stories about the house. And she did tell the people she gave the doll to that her daughters were now afraid of it, and that's why she was getting rid of it. So
that's nice. That's what you post on Craigslist.
So she did tell them, right? She did tell them.
Hey, this thing might maul you in your sleep, but I hope your little girl enjoys it.
Now, the first night that the doll was at its new home, The family claimed that their beds began to rock all over the room.
Yeah.
Now, they did the smart thing and threw the doll out like right away. Just yucked that bitch in the garbage. And I'm going to guess they probably weren't friends with the deities anymore after that.
I probably wouldn't be either. I have some reservations of being friends with them.
I mean, right. She
Fucking
did tell
tools.
them. She did warn them.
Warn them that your kids are afraid of it. Like a lot of children, a lot of people have a fear of dolls. I don't like dolls, but you could mention, hey, it looked at them threateningly, so there's probably something in this. It might rock your beds back and forth, might put you to sleep, might throw you through a window. Who knows? Assholes. His family is beginning to get what's coming to them.
Any more?
Yeah, next, are they going to sacrifice the remaining dog?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Have to stick around and find out.
Yeah, I guess so. What was the barbecue? What kind of meat was that?
Tasty meat.
Yeah.
But apparently not tasty enough for Father Bob to do a good fucking job.
You know, shit. They should have gifted the doll to Father Bob. It's probably his fault.
He did it, you dick. Way to go,
Yeah.
Father Bob. Half-assing it.
Let me hang this doll and then give it away just to piss it off enough.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
light its arm on fire too.
Right. If hanging it wasn't bad enough, they also just said, we don't want you anymore and gave it away.
Yeah. Why would you hang it?
I don't know.
Burn it or something.
I don't know. I have no idea what was going through their brains on that one.
Kids those days.
However, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure what's creepier is the possessed doll or the kids that come up with the idea to lynch the fucking thing.
Right.
like
that is not a healthy thought for kids of any age.
I am not sure what's worse at this moment.
Yeah.
I'll have to get back with you on that one.
Just saying, if I were to hang a doll and it looks at me threateningly, I'm probably going to have a tea party with it and try to make amends.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah.
That might be a good idea.
I'll be like, hey, sorry I tried to kill you.
Hey, yeah.
You're going to live with someone else.
Sorry about the lynching thing. Have some tea. You know?
Yeah. You want me to make homemade biscuits? I'll do that.
Cookies? What? You want one lump or two? You know, please don't kill me.
I'll even let you sleep in my bed. I'll sleep in the closet.
Right, there you go. You can have my bed. You can have my bed. Now, throughout the time in the house, Clara's health began to decline, like noticeably. She lost weight really rapidly, and she walked around in what she described as a state of constant apathy.
CrossFit.
CrossFit. In her journal, she wrote, quote, "Sometimes I think the house is absorbing me. I can't seem to explain it to anybody but Beth. It frightens me to always be on the verge of tears, always exhausted, always drained." End quote. So that's kind of what Clara was going through during this whole time.
I've read about that stuff happening too.
So have I, but just to take that 2 steps back and give a skeptical view of it. You have a woman who is at odds with her husband and they're not doing well financially, and her children are growing up.
And apparently still sleeping in a room from time to time.
This all very well just could be depression.
And sleep deprivation.
I mean, if it depends on how much of this you want to believe, sure. But what she describes could very well just be regular old depression, which they were not very good at diagnosing in 1970s.
Yeah. And nowadays they're not very good because everything's depression.
Now, again, that's just to take the 2 steps back skeptical view. If you add that into everything else, and give it the benefit of the doubt.
It's a hot spot for that happening.
Some negative fucking activity.
Yeah.
Which is having an effect on the family. So. Now, it seemed as if Beth's room was another one of the more active areas of the house throughout their time there. She would see things like one night she saw a woman with long dark hair staring at her from outside of her bedroom window. She said that when she locked eyes with the apparition, she became disoriented and wasn't sure if she was inside or outside.
I've had a nightmare like that.
I don't know what to think about, because it's like she locked eyes with it and it tried to like possess her and they tried to switch spots or something is kind of what she's describing. At least I'm taking it that way, and that's fucking creepy.
Yeah, that's like that one mirror demon thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Weird. Huh. Fucking weird. She also complained about feeling a presence in her room and talked about getting like the feeling that someone was coming in and sitting on her bed at night. That's creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I've had that happen to me.
Well, at least it's not a vampire. We know that.
No.
Nobody invited it in.
I feel like that's maybe vampire propaganda, though.
You don't think a vampire needs invitations?
No, I don't think so. I think that's vampire propaganda. I think they told us stuff like that to make us feel safe and secure.
So I'm eating a shitload of garlic for no reason?
You are definitely giving yourself that little bit of extra flavor and spice.
Yeah, I probably taste amazing.
For when the vampires eat you.
Come here and maul me. Tell me how I taste.
Now, when she would come to visit, Claire's mom would often sleep in Beth's room. And she said that she could feel a lot of the same things Beth did, like a presence in the room and somebody sitting on the bed and things like that. Now, Beth also spoke frequently of hearing voices outside of her bedroom window. But she said she could never really make out what they were saying. On August 30th, Clara wrote in her journal, quote, "Beth's room is jumping today. We have developed many codes when we mean a room is disturbed. Jumping is one of them. I don't know how to describe a hostile atmosphere to someone who has never experienced one, but I'll try. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, you're restless. Sometimes you feel as though something is watching you and waiting. Or you get the vague feeling there's something you've forgotten to do. An uneasy feeling of fear, depression, or apprehension. Have you ever been present at a friend's house when there's obvious tension in the air and you feel you've interrupted a quarrel? That uneasy, squirming feeling is much the same." End quote. So that's just kind of Clara's explanation or description of what the atmosphere in the house was like.
Yeah.
Just damn hostile. Tense and hostile. Despite the fact that she doesn't really talk much about tensions in the family except between her and Phil, which she said were greatly lessened because he wasn't there a lot.
Well, that's good.
So,
absence is key to a healthy relationship.
I guess.
Teaching all sorts of lessons.
As active as Beth's room was and the things that happened there, Mary's room was said to be the absolute worst in the house.
That's the girl who had the letter opener or whatever
in her picture. Yes. That's also the room where the card was found.
Yeah.
And the room where 3 of their pets just croaked for no damn reason. Things in her room were so bad that by August 6th, Mary just flat out refused to sleep in there anymore.
Smart girl.
She wouldn't do it. She said there was almost constant knocking sounds and footsteps. And it wasn't just her that said it while she was in there. The family could hear it when they were outside of that room. And Clara said that if you went to go into that room, you would pretty much just like run into a wall of freezing cold air. And she said it was like you would cross the threshold and boom, you're in this freezing cold air. And if you step backwards out of the door, you couldn't feel it anymore. So it was like very centrally located in that room. Yeah. Now, in her journal, Clara wrote, quote, "It's lucky that Phil works so Mary can sleep with me. The atmosphere in her room is unbelievable. There seems to be a vacuum in there. There's a very strong, very discernible physical pressure on your ears and temples. It causes your ears to pop as though the atmosphere were rarefied. The only comparison I can make is the feeling when your ears pop on an airplane. In addition, if anyone is outside the window, just a few feet away, it's as though they are worlds away and you can hardly hear them. Tonight, Mary and I lay in bed listening to what sounded like furniture being moved around downstairs. When I went down to check, Beth said she was lying in bed listening to furniture being moved around in Mary's room. In addition, Mary's bed was creaking under someone's weight, even though the room was closed and empty. At least, I thought it was." End quote.
Why at this point are you still going to check shit out?
What else are you going to do, though?
Stay in the room where it's safe. Ish. I'm going back to the salt circle idea.
Right.
Phil has the good idea. Go to work.
Right. Now, as obviously disturbing and creepy and just weird as some of the previous stuff has been, it's my opinion that things were a little bit worse with Laura. Clara remarks that she saw a disturbing change in her daughter Laura. And it kind of started with the dancing lady by the pool or by the pond. So at the time, Laura had claimed that she had been facing the other way and that she had not at all seen the woman dancing by the pond. Right? But when the other two girls were talking about this instance with their mother, Laura commented, quote, "I bet that lady hanged herself. Her eyes were bulging out of her head." End quote.
So, is this the same girl who saw the lady outside of her window and felt the...
No, that was Beth.
Okay.
We're kind of going daughter by daughter here.
Okay.
Now, there was also an instance where during the first week of August, Clara was told by some friends that Laura began accusing every male around her of molestation. Yeah.
It's a popular thing with possession.
Yeah, it really is. That just gives me a whole yucky feeling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like it, but that's part of the story, so there it is. Now, at first, Clara was very obviously worried about her daughter. But after some thought, she kind of started to think that the strange behavior might have been due to Laura's learning disability, which was known to come with some emotional issues. I do not know what disability she had. I don't know enough about learning disabilities to know whether or not they come with emotional issues. I am not in any way a psychologist or psychiatrist. But just kind of on a more, straightforward, keep it simple, stupid type of thinking, I don't think I would have immediately blamed a learning disability for a child's emotional issues when you have like an absent husband and family tension and all that kind of shit going on.
Possible ghosties.
Again, I am not a psychologist, but that's my opinion of things. Anyway, Clara and Phil did sit down with their daughter to talk about the accusations she was making. And in her journal, Clara wrote of the conversation, quote, "The disconcerting thing about the whole thing was that when we questioned her, we had the distinct feeling that it wasn't Laura who answered us. Her phrasing was different, strangely formal and old-fashioned. And there was an odd look in her eyes. In fact, she seemed impersonally amused by the whole thing." End quote.
Definitely sounds like possession.
It does have hints of possession, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a whole lot going on with that little girl. Now, Clara at some point had met and become friends with a psychic named Wally. It's a great name for a psychic. Now,
we got Bob and Wally.
Father Bob and Wally the psychic. Now, Wally came up from Buffalo to Hinsdale to visit the family and check the house out, right? And on the entire drive, he had trouble with his car, which is something that they just keep talking about it. Trouble with the car, trouble with the car, trouble with the car. His car trouble actually culminated in his exhaust falling the fuck off as he turned onto the road where the Dandy's house was. Like, it just fell the fuck off as he turned onto the road.
Now, I've been there. I've owned a Ford. But it's so weird that it's when they're driving to the place, like the ghosties are trying to keep them away.
Yeah, something. Well, another thing I didn't mention is, like, it's not just cars breaking down. Car accidents are something we are going to talk about in depth in a little bit. But one of them that I didn't actually get into is the fact that Clara's mom and dad only ever had 3 car accidents in their entire life, and all 3 were while they were going from the Hinsdale house back to Buffalo.
Remind me not to visit.
We'll get there.
Either that or I'll buy a piece of shit car just to go there.
Now, just add insult to injury. Not only did his exhaust fall the fuck off and he had all his car trouble, but later on he would discover that somewhere along the trip, either there or back, I'm not sure, whatever, his car sprung a gas leak.
Great.
So,
I was expecting you to say somehow the exhaust fell forward, popped up, and punctured his oil pan.
No, we're not quite that bad.
Oh,
but Wally said that as soon as he arrived, he felt that something didn't want him there.
No shit.
No shit, dumbass. Something didn't want you there.
Felt it when you started driving.
Right. Something didn't want you there long before you got there, bud.
Yeah.
So he kind of moved around the property a little bit, checked things out, and what he said was that the house was haunted by a family. A mother, a father, a son, and a grandmother. Okay? He said that the ghost family was displeased by all the noise and chaos that the Dandy family had brought to the house with them. Okay? That was his opinion of what was going on there. Now, despite the fact that he knew absolutely nothing about Laura, Wally could tell immediately upon meeting her that the house was having a very negative effect on the girl and told her parents as much. And Wally wasn't the only one. The family wasn't the only one that was worried about Laura. So a family friend had told Clara that she too was worried about the girl. She had been over at the Dandy House and was swimming in the pond with Laura. And Laura had started to move like towards the middle of the pond. And the woman had told Laura, you know, hey, don't go out too deep, you know. To this, Laura replied, quote, "It's okay. I know I'm going to die young, and it doesn't matter because I've seen everything anyway." End quote.
Yeah. Something ain't right with that girl.
Lots not right with that girl.
She needs a bath in holy water.
Now, that in and of itself is bad enough. I almost feel bad about adding this, but I'm going to anyway. The friend also told Clara that when Laura had said that particular sentence, her eyes had narrowed like a cat's. Not sure exactly what that means. I don't know if her pupils went slit, because if she did that, I'd have been the fuck out of that pond quicker than shit.
I wouldn't have came back to tell him. Been like, hey, landline. Your daughter's a bit fucked up. You'll never see me again.
Yeah,
I moved to Massachusetts.
I'm not coming over anymore. Now, Wally, after meeting the girl and telling her parents, hey, this place is having a real bad effect on your daughter, just straight up told Phil and Clara that they needed to get her out of the damned house.
Good idea.
Right? Yeah, I'm thinking. And to their credit, they listened.
Good job.
They took Laura and took her down to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a while in Buffalo, and Mary wanted to go with her. But it was only for a little while. On August 18th, the girls came back to the house in Hinsdale. Clara, for her part, was not at all convinced that this was a good idea. But, you know, summer was kind of coming to an end. School was going to be starting soon, and the girls couldn't be gone forever. Right?
Sure they can.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking maybe.
Grandparents adopt them.
They'll keep them for a while, I'm sure. Now, almost immediately upon coming back to the house, Laura began once again talking about being harassed by unseen forces. She said that her purse would just start swinging from the hook where she hung it every night, even though there was no breeze and no draft or anything like that. She began to complain of dead animal smells in her bedroom.
Or possession shit.
Which, that's not fucking pleasant. I don't care what it is. And in my opinion, worst of all, she started complaining that something was touching her in the middle of the night. So,
yay.
Yeah. Ooh. Just gives you kind of a yucky feeling in your tummy, doesn't it?
My tummy, my toes, my ear.
Now, on August 28th, Laura, who had been sleeping in bed with her mother, got up to use the bathroom around 3 o'clock in the morning. Clara had felt the girl get up, and so she kind of woke up a little bit. And that's why she was awake enough to hear it when her daughter just gasped. Clara sat up and looked and saw the girl staring out and looked as well. And what she saw was an eerie red glow coming from downstairs.
Great.
Clara, of course, got up and ran downstairs, only to discover that someone or something had turned on all the burners on the stove. And they had been left on so long that they had become white hot and were actually the cause of the glow.
Can stovetops get that hot?
I don't think they can anymore. But I'm not sure if they had like a temperature regulator deal in the 70s, like especially electric ones back then. If it was an electric one, it doesn't really say.
Right.
But I had that same thought too. I'm like, can that really happen? I don't know. I don't know much about 1970s stove technology.
Yeah.
So who knows? Now, in mid-July, Clara finally decided to start searching for someone who could help.
Hey.
Yeah, hey.
Only been long enough.
And it was through that search that she stumbled upon Father Alphonsus.
That sounds better.
There we go. Alphonsus Trebold was born in Rochester, New York in 1925. From a young age, he had been fascinated by the paranormal, the occult, witchcraft, magic, and religion. This sounds like a guy I could party with.
Yeah. Super old, though.
He had been ordained to the Franciscan order in 1951 at the age of 26, after which he began teaching theology at St. Bonaventure and was a very popular teacher, especially with the students in his most popular class, religion and the paranormal.
That sounds like a class I want.
Dude, no shit. I had no idea that was an option.
Yeah. I would have went back to college for that.
I might call him up and go take that class right now.
Yeah.
Now, another reason why I want to party with this guy is that he always left the front row of his class open just in case any ghosts wanted to come and sit in on his lecture.
I bet he wouldn't have tried lynching a ghost doll.
He just sounds like a cool dude.
He does.
Now, his colleagues and other people described him as being a very smart man with a great sense of humor, obviously. He was a cigar smoker.
Attaboy.
Who used cigars and smoke and a pipe, but he used a fake human skull as an ashtray.
What a badass. But he drank like 27-year-old scotch too.
I didn't know priests could get away with doing that kind of stuff. Now, despite, the things we've just said and all that, he was also a man who was very intent on finding that combination of his two passions, the supernatural and God. Still thinking I could party with that guy.
Yeah.
And here is probably my favorite quote from any Catholic priest that I have ever heard in my life. Okay? In an interview, he said, quote, "Any power that we have has to ultimately come from God. Very often, you will find that people associate any kind of paranormal ability, for instance, ESP, with something evil. They say it's the devil. No, it isn't. It's just things we don't understand." End quote. I like this guy.
Yeah. Should have got him right off the bat and right when it all started.
Mm-hmm. Now, a little bit of further backstory on Father Al was that he actually did become internationally famous in his field, and he consulted on many cases, including the case that I can't remember if we were recording or not when you said it, but you mentioned it earlier, a case that would become known as the Amityville Horror.
Oh, we were definitely recording at that point.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, your favorite case.
Yeah, I rolled my eyes hard at that one. Now, given the nature of his job and the close proximity of Rochester to Hinsdale, which is approximately 113 miles according to Google Maps, it's really no surprise that Father Al would get involved in the happenings at the Dandy House in good old Hinsdale. Father Alphonsus paid the family a visit and sat with each and every one of them, puffing on his pipe and listening to their stories.
What a man.
Yeah, that's my kind of guy right there. After hearing the family's stories, he simply nodded and asked them if he could come back after nightfall to see things for himself. Of course, the family agreed, and he returned that evening. His visit was uneventful, but he did let the family know that he believed them and told them to call if they ever needed him for anything. On July 29th, which was after the dancing lady and Laura beginning to act very strangely and all that, Clara made that phone call to Father Al. Father Alphonsus answered the call and promised to be there as soon as he possibly could. And obviously a man of his word, he arrived later that very same day with another priest. The pair of priests went around blessing the house. Despite the fact that it had been blessed before, they hoped it would do the trick, and, I mean, hey, you got to start somewhere, right? I don't think I would trust Father Bob's blessing anyway. Father Al began visiting the family frequently. He would come and talk to the family and apparently walk around the property with his arms tucked neatly behind his back like a man strolling in the park instead of visiting a demon-infested dwelling. He would inspect things and help the family chase off unwanted looky-loos who had begun showing up after the local paper ran a story about what was going on at the house. On August 29th, Clara wrote in her journal, quote, "Father Al came to visit today and said Mass on our kitchen table. Afterwards, he said a simple exorcism and carried the host around the house and grounds." End quote. After this, Father Al said that he thought he had taken the spirits with him. But he was wrong, and the activity continued. After this, someone up at the campground said that they saw a woman outside the window of their camper trailer. They said that the woman was dressed in sheer, gauzy clothes and was swaying as if she was dancing. Phil's sister visited the house and said she saw a woman's face as she walked through the kitchen. She saw the face on the stairs and described it as fuzzy and unclear. Apparently just a disembodied, fuzzy face.
Was Chewbacca a thing?
Was it Ewok?
Yeah, it was an Ewok. Or one of those yub guys.
That's the Ewoks.
Okay, yeah.
The little teddy bear guys. The little
Wookiees, yeah.
The little teddy bear guy.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't have one of them as a pet.
I bet they would have if they could have got one.
Yeah, probably. Probably would have gotten the Chupacabra too.
Now, even after Father Al's visit, Beth continued to report hearing noises coming from the crawl space and said it was still making it hard to sleep. Nobody in the house, however, was quite brave enough to open the crawl space door to see what the hell was going on in there.
It's about time fear mixed with brains.
Now, on September 3rd, Clara invited some friends over for dinner. I don't know why they keep having people over to this fucking house, but
honestly,
whatever. She said that night the feeling of doom descended on the house.
Oh, shit.
They were all in the living room when they began to hear loud footsteps coming from upstairs. Coming from Mary's room. One of her guests inquired who was up there. Clara said nobody. Another one of the guests decided to go up and check it out.
Why?
They went upstairs, opened Mary's bedroom door, and found no one inside. Just that wall of icy cold air. Now, let's get back to Phil for a minute.
All right, my favorite guy in this story.
Good old fucking Phil.
Other than the new priest.
Now, Phil continued with his beliefs that the family was pretty much just imagining shit, and that there was logical explanations for all of this.
Yet he's staying the fuck away.
But the fact that his family was obviously terrified did worry him.
Well, that's good.
Which I don't know why he didn't get him the fuck out of there, but whatever. In early September, Phil said he began to feel some sort of presence calling to him, beckoning him from the tree line at the edge of the property. Yes.
Okay, you can cut this out, but like the last minute and a half you've been talking is straight up deja vu. Like I remember all this, every word for word.
So you've probably heard parts of this story before?
Well, no, I remember.
Oh, us having this conversation? Ooh, creepy.
You telling the story.
Fucking hate deja vu.
Me too. We should do an episode on that.
We will, and I'm leaving that in, by the way.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Love you guys.
Now, Clara did not feel good about the beckoning presence from the woods.
Huh.
And she tried to kind of flip the script on old Philly boy and told him, just ignore it. It's nothing, blah, blah, blah. But eventually he decided to go and check it out. And since Clara was unable to talk her husband out of it, she just decided to go with him. That's a loyal woman right there. So they went out to see what the hell it was that Phil was feeling out there calling to him. And as they circled the pond, they encountered cold spots here and there. The most notable of the cold spots was in the exact spot where the girls had seen the dancing lady. Finding nothing out there but cold spots, they turned around and headed back for the house. As they did, Clara looked up and noticed a girl in the window of her daughter Beth's room. The girl was kneeling by Beth's dresser, and Clara describes her as having strawberry blonde hair and said she was wearing a pale pink cap on her head. Clara did not recognize this girl and knew that it was not one of her daughter's friends. She tried to get Phil's attention and point out the girl, but was interrupted by Beth and her at the time boyfriend Jeff, who came running out of the house and told Clara and Phil that they had been sitting on the porch when a white-clad figure had darted past them into the house.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Phil decided that somebody was messing with him and that they probably had a normal run-of-the-mill intruder. Right? This being his opinion, he, kind of rallied the family to this and whatever. So Beth's boyfriend, Jeff, pulled his motorcycle up and started using the headlight to kind of scan around the dark in the yard around the pond and things. That's pretty smart. That
smart, Jeff.
Makes a good spotlight, really.
Yeah.
And as he's doing this, suddenly they heard screaming coming from the back of the house.
Yay.
It was Mary, who said she had been standing outside with Beth when she saw a woman looking out at her from her own bedroom window. Beth kind of backed this claim up, saying that when her sister had screamed, she too had looked up and had seen the curtain drop back down into place.
Okay, I got a quick thing, if I may.
You may.
All right, so that is the one that saw a girl outside her window, right?
Beth was, yes.
Now, here's for a little mind fuck. What if she was looking at a different time as she saw herself looking in her window?
No. That was Mary who saw the girl in the window upstairs.
Oh.
Beth's room is downstairs, and Clara saw the girl in Beth's room. I know, It gets a little mixed up.
Yeah. Too many
daughters, too many windows, too many whatever. Now, I'm not sure if I added this later or not, but the next series of events are all kind of happening like at once.
Okay.
I think I described that later, but I just want to make that clear. Like from the Clara sees the girl in the window to quite a few things that are going to happen here. It's all just going down, boom, 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 right?
Okay.
So where were we? Mary screams, sees a woman in her window. Beth sees the curtain fall, tells everybody, they run in the house. Well, I mean, if you think there's an intruder, you're going to go in there.
A logical person would be like, hey, I'm going to use my cell phone. I know.
Not in 1973 or not.
I'm going to run over to my neighbor's house and call the cops, because
that one might be a fair thought.
There could be an armed stranger in my house. Now, yeah, I'd go in there with my sledgehammer that I keep in my truck, but I'm not a rational thinking person.
Well, you know, just to throw this out there, you got Phil and you got Jeff and you got Mike, and they're grown men, right? And you got
that sleep with their mothers still.
You got like 43 girls running around.
Yeah, no shit.
They're definitely going to outnumber any intruders that are in the house.
Yeah, except a cult of vampire ghosts.
Yeah, maybe. But even then, the cops aren't going to do any good. They're not equipped to deal with that kind of thing.
Holy bullets. I believe they were a very popular practice back in 1973.
They might have been. Times were different back then. Now, once they were all back inside the house, they noticed that every light upstairs had been turned on when they had previously been off.
Oh, the ghost is fucking with their electric bill.
And that the door to the root cellar was standing wide open. This was a door that they all knew was closed because they never used it. And not only was it kept closed, it was also kept bolted shut.
Oh, great.
This point is when shit really pops off. Okay? In her book, Clara wrote, quote, Beth and Jeff saw a man standing on the front lawn at the corner of the house. Phil ran out there only to have someone scream that there was someone or something in the yard, which I'm assuming she meant backyard. To continue the quote, it got so bad that I couldn't look out the windows because every time I did, I got the impression of someone passing by, end quote. So from the sounds of it, whatever it was fucking playing with them.
Yeah.
Like getting them to dart out the front only to show up in the back and then be kind of everywhere and inside and outside, and got some real trickster element going on at this point.
What a dick.
At one point, Mike and his friend Randy, who had been visiting because they still have visitors at the house.
Oh my God.
Jumped in the car and headed down the road to see if they could see anybody like taking off or coming up or whatever. And at one point, Mike, for some reason that's not really explained, turns around and looks in the back seat, where he sees a very visible imprint as if someone were sitting there. So apparently the invisible man hooked a ride up the road. At this point, they turn around, they go back to the house, and they get there just in time to hear Beth shrieking. She said she had been walking into the living room and had glanced into her own bedroom and seen a girl with strawberry blonde hair sitting on her bed. The same girl that Clara had seen earlier, but like I said, all this is going on at once. And in the ensuing chaos, Clara had not yet told anyone that she had seen a girl in Beth's room. So Claire and Beth are standing there and they're comparing observations about the girl that they're seeing in Beth's room when Phil comes down the stairs to report to the family that all the lights are now inexplicably off. As he was coming back down the stairs, he had decided for a reason that I can only imagine is, hey, here's a space we haven't checked. Maybe there's somebody in it. He opened the crawl space door.
That was previously open?
No, that was the root cellar.
Okay.
This is the crawl space. So he opens the door and looks inside. Clara writes, quote, our chimney, which had been neatly mortared, had been taken apart brick by brick and carefully stacked against the other wall. So Beth had heard something. When Beth saw the chimney, or what was left of it, she began to cry. End quote. So remember when I said nobody had the balls to look in there?
Yeah.
They should have looked in there. For once, they didn't check and they should have checked. But I feel like that kind of ties in with this trickster element that it's fucking with them.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to check up on me, I'm not going to leave any evidence. But if you're not, I'm going to do stuff.
Right.
It's fucking weird.
Yeah, like with the papers falling and the windows shutting.
Yeah, and nothing actually happened. And a lot of times they heard furniture moving around, but nothing was moved. And then it seems like when things did happen, they weren't aware of it until after the fact, like the lamp breaking in Mary's room.
Mm-hmm.
You got to imagine that should make a noise.
Yeah.
But they don't hear it. So if they don't hear it, something happened. And if they do hear it, nothing happened until this one time when they don't check and something happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, where's your what a dick button?
I'm going to hook all that back up here real quick.
Okay.
I got the adapter now.
Okay.
Anyway. So all this shit's going down. Clara gets on the phone and she calls Father Al. Okay?
About fucking time.
Right. The priest answers the call and heads to the house immediately. Once he gets there, he sets the family down and he has them tell him everything. Right? And as he talks to Clara and the kids, Phil borrows Father Al's flashlight and goes outside to scan the property. I know, bad move, Philly. Bad move. He's outside scanning the property and suddenly yells out for everyone to come outside. Look, maybe they're just going to die together. I don't know.
Phil lost my respect. Thought he was being a good guy going out there cheating and being safe away from the house, but turns out he's getting his family killed.
Now the family, of course, goes outside to see what the hell Phil's yelling about.
Because they all have that learning disability.
And they look at where Phil's pointing the flashlight, which is in the direction of the pond. And in the beam of light, they see a young girl in a sheer nightgown walking up the path. Clara said that as the girl walked, her nightgown swayed back and forth and changed color, going from white to purple and back again.
I didn't know ghosties had purple.
Apparently.
Yeah. I thought it was all red, blue, or white.
They can just color change their outfit whenever they want, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently they have green, grayish ectoplasm.
And magic color changing nightgowns.
Yeah.
Now, after this, apparently things kind of calmed down a little bit. And everybody was exhausted, right? It'd been kind of a stressful little bit of time here.
If you tell me they fell asleep.
Now, wait. It was quite the opposite. Nobody felt safe enough to go to bed.
Okay.
Right? They're all keyed up. They're exhausted, but they're keyed up. Right? So, for Phil's first man point for me, he and Father Al volunteered to stay up all night and keep watch while everybody else got some rest. Okay. The next morning, the shit continued.
In the morning.
Clara found her purse, which had been missing, laying out in the open on the bathroom scale.
Scale?
Yep, on the bathroom scale. You know, where you weigh yourself?
It's just a scale.
Jesus fucking Christ. In the purse, she discovered that there were $4 missing.
The fucking ghost is a robber.
Now, Father Al told Clara that money going missing could be a demonic ploy, a way to get the family to blame and mistrust each other and break them apart.
$4. $4 is gonna break a family apart.
In 1970, that might have been the equivalent of like $8.
Yeah,
I don't know. So the family began to keep a nightly watch, just in case Phil was right and it was just regular people fucking with him, right? And Mike even managed to recruit some of his friends to help.
because they're all willing to come over.
I guess. Now, every night on this watch, they experienced something strange. On one night, they saw someone in a small boat on the pond.
Why not?
When they tried shining their flashlights on the figure, their flashlights went out and would not turn back on.
Of course.
On another occasion, they were going around with a Polaroid camera, snapping pictures and hoping to get something paranormal.
Because we all know that ends well.
Now, as they went around snapping these pictures, they saw a man, again, by the pond. Not in a boat this time, just standing on the bank. Their first assumption was that this was just a trespasser. So they took off running across the yard to confront him, right? The man took off running toward the tree line. And when he got there, he turned around and backed up against a tree and raised his hands. Right? The kid who was in charge of the Polaroid camera snapped a picture of the man while the other moved towards him to confront him. But as the second kid approached, the man completely disappeared. Okay. In the picture, Clara said it showed a middle-aged man in a navy blue jacket. A man who appeared to be hurt. His nose was pushed to one side and his jaw was twisted. There was blood down the side of his face and his mouth was open as if he were screaming. She said the man appeared to be terrified of something. Something that was behind and to the left of the boys. Clara also said that the picture showed a narrow blue glow around the man. Father Al looked at this picture and told Clara that a blue glow meant a good spirit. And he took the picture and sent it to the Institute for Psychic Research in New York City. Which pisses me off because now we don't have that picture. Thanks, Father Al. At one point during all of this, Mike called his mother into his bedroom and told her that everything looked foggy. Clara said that foggy wasn't exactly the right word, but it was a good enough description of whatever was occurring. She said that everything in the room seemed kind of out of focus, hard to see. They tried to remedy this by changing up the lighting, but it didn't help. In Beth's room, there began to be new and strange smells. An unrecognizable perfume and the smell of cigar smoke, most notably. Yes.
Could have been Father Al, right?
He wasn't there.
Well, cigar smoke lingers pretty good.
The way I'm kind of reading it is like it would just show up out of nowhere and then disappear.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
On September 8th, Beth went in to go to bed. Just after she turned off the light, she heard the drawer of her bedside table open. She turned over and saw what she thought was her mother, standing there and looking at her diary. Thinking that it was her mother, she asked what was wrong. The woman responded by asking, "Are you sure it was June 29th?" Beth assumed the woman meant the date of a fire that had happened down the road, which was, coincidentally, the day that they had pinpointed as the day things had ramped up. Beth and Clara had discussed this coincidence, and that's what led Beth to think that's what this woman was talking about. So she was still thinking she was talking to her mother when she answered, "That's what my diary says." With this answer, the woman put the diary down and left the room. It was only later that Beth realized how much had been wrong with that particular interaction. Namely, the woman had never faced Beth. Her mother also did not own a long nightgown like the one the woman in her bedroom had been wearing. And there was also the fact that Clara could not possibly have read the writing in the diary because of how dark the room was. On the 19th of September, Father Al came to visit again, and this time he brought with him a man named Alex. Alex was a psychic who had been lecturing at Bonaventure that very day. Alex claimed that his psychic powers were so strong that he could tell if you were going to die soon just by shaking your hand.
Cocky.
Now, before Alex had a chance to hear of anything that happened around the house, he and Father Al took a walk around the property. And afterwards, they met with the family. And again, before they told their story, Alex gave his impressions. His psychic impressions. Now, according to Clara, Alex looked her right in the eye and asked, "Did you know you had a mass murder here?" Thanks for creeping us the fuck out, Alex.
Yeah, that's how you open it. Hey, how's it going?
Alex went on to say that he had saw 7 spirits. Some clear, some not so much. He saw a man that had been stabbed, a woman who had been hanged, another woman who had been drowned, another man who had been beaten to death. Yep, recall the broken nose, crooked jawed fella that was terrified. And a young girl of around 18 who had been beaten and tortured to death. A girl with strawberry blonde hair. Yeah.
Decent psychic.
Good on you, Alex. He went on to tell the family that all of these events had happened 100 years previously, and that somewhere nearby were graves. Graves that had been disturbed. Upon hearing this, Clara recalled that just before they had moved in, a barn had been torn down and a brand new pond dug.
Oh, shit.
And she also recalled the bones that her dogs had used to bring home. Alex continued, saying that before being buried, the bodies had been kept in the crawl space, and that when he had opened the door and looked inside, what he had seen through his psychic impressions were bodies stacked like firewood. Yeah.
It's not how you stack bodies.
Not generally. He also said that there was the spirit of a 90-year-old woman who had died recently and was not at all connected to the others. Later on, Clara actually confirmed that the previous owner of the house had died the summer before they bought the house. So things kind of settled down for a while after Alex and Father Al left. And in the lull in the activity, they tasked the family with researching the history of the house and searching for any burial grounds in the area. Mike and his friends volunteered to go looking for graves. On October 1st, Mike and his crew were out doing just that. They went up Burton Road, and as they were going up there on foot walking, they saw a light in the trees. Every time they would get closer to the light would blink out, and then come on and blink out. The crew continued walking and started hearing strange noises from the woods, and they began to pass through cold spots. At one point, they all felt as if they were being followed, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they all decided to head on back home. Mike told his mother about this experience and said that he was worried that he had brought someone home and that he was afraid to go downstairs to his bedroom. And as they talked about this, they heard the back door open and suddenly slam shut. Yeah.
Yippee-ki-yay.
16 days after this, the young men once again gathered their nutties and decided to brave Burton Road. This was the first of many attempts that they would make, but each one would end with something going wrong. On this first attempt, one of Mike's friends, as they were walking up the road, fell into a trance. On the second attempt, 3 of the young men just collapsed. The third time, they were starting to get smart, and 2 of them went up in a car. And as they drove down Burton Road, they saw in front of them a man in the middle of the road. A headless man.
Perfect for New York, right?
Because this was just in the middle of the road, the driver swerved, which I'm not sure why. The guy has no head. If you hit him, it's not really going to do any damage to that guy. But he did swerve and pulled over to the side of the road. And when he did, the young man in the passenger's seat suddenly lost control of his hand. And completely without his input, he drew a picture on the windshield of the car, which means they need to wash their windshield.
Oh, shit.
But the picture was of a saw with a stick figure next to it.
Clever.
Yeah, the buzzsaw from earlier, buddy. That's called a callback. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's just how the story goes. Now, remember I said earlier we're going to talk about some car accidents?
I remember.
Okay. On the 21st of October, Mike was in a very, very bad car accident.
Nice.
One that would actually require an emergency surgery to remove his spleen and plug up some internal bleeding. He almost died. He did wind up losing consciousness, but before he passed out, the officers that responded said that he kept asking them if they had saved the other guy in the car with him. But there was no passenger to be found.
I mean, that can just be like delirious from
It could be, for
all
sure.
that trauma.
For sure.
Especially with how bad it sounds.
Yeah, for sure. That's a very fair assessment. It's one of those things where, yes, taken individually, yeah. Put with everything else, I don't know.
Right.
Now, because of Mike's accident, Phil was sleeping on the couch to be closer to the phone in case the hospital called. And on the night of the 23rd, that's where he was. And he was just on the verge of sleep when he saw 5 men dressed in what he called Little Lord Fauntleroy outfits, but which Clara described as Puritan clothing. He said they came out of a door.
We're really fucking dated now. Huh?
I know, right? Which, to be fair, in Puritan times, that part of New York was populated, so.
Right.
But anyway, he had seen the 5 men come out of a door that had once led to the front porch. But after remodel and addition and all that, was now just a fucking closet in the living room. The men were discussing someone. And Phil heard them saying things like, should we wait or take him now? That was the type of discussion they were having. Apparently, they came to some sort of decision and left the same way that they came in. Now, Phil obviously took it to mean that they were talking about his son. Right? But Mike turned out okay.
That's good.
Mike turned out okay by the very next morning. He was awake, and he was fine, and he was stable.
Damn.
But Mike's roommate just so happened to have been in a car accident that very night and had not been so fortunate. He wound up dying. Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the actual fuck? Coincidence, connection, I don't know, but it's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, like I said, was fine, but he did have to spend a few more weeks in the hospital. During that time, Beth's now ex-boyfriend, Jeff.
Oh, man. Sorry it didn't work out.
He stopped by to show the family his new car. Apparently, he was still friends with the family. He was still friends with Beth. He would stop by and visit.
Just the ghosties pushed him away.
Apparently. But anyway, he stopped by the house to show the Dandy family his new car.
Got in a car accident.
He did. As he left the Hinsdale house, Jeff got into a pretty bad accident at almost the exact same place as Mike had had his accident. He wasn't quite as bad off as Mike, but he was in pretty rough shape, and Beth actually went down to Buffalo for a week to help take care of him in the hospital. When she got back, she said that the frequency of the people talking outside her window had increased. Clara, in her book, wrote that a man and a woman were the ones that you could hear talking out there, and that their conversation would often be punctuated by someone hitting the fuel oil tank for their furnace and hitting it hard. The most alarming thing, though, was that they had started calling Beth by name. Yeah. Yeah. Now, we're going to move on to kind of your favorite little topic here, baby boy.
Spiders.
No. Close. Oh. Because if all of that wasn't like fucking creepy enough, right? It started to seem that like the spirits could also inhabit the people in and around the house.
Possession. Knew it.
So, on December the 8th, Mike and a group of his friends were staying the night when they saw Beth sleepwalking. Or at least that's what they thought she was doing. What they saw was Beth come out of her bedroom and walk over the young men who were in sleeping bags and on cots in the middle of the living room floor. Beth walked over them and sat down on the couch, holding an invisible ball and saying, quote, "It's all mine. Mama gave it to me. It's all mine. So pretty." End quote. After this, she got up and walked into the bathroom, where she began to knead invisible bread dough over the bathtub. Now, later, the family would look up like some old plans for the house and stuff and discover that where the bathroom was, there had once been a pantry, and where the tub was had been a big, like, working counter. Okay. After making invisible bread, Beth tried to leave the house.
Oh, boy.
But, the young men kind of stopped her from doing that and led her over to one of their cots, right? And they sat her down on it. But as she sat, both sides of this metal-ass cot bent and broke. This, despite the fact that Beth was only 110 pounds and significantly lighter than the boy who had been laying on it just fine only a few minutes before.
I think she was lying about her weight.
Some women do that. Now you want the real ooky part?
Yes.
During this whole thing, Beth's normally brown eyes had changed to a very vivid and obvious blue.
It's the best eye color. On a color-related note,
yes,
your video is like black and white right now.
Well, yeah, it's dark in here. It's spooky. That didn't help.
No, it's just black and white. It's weird.
Now, Beth wasn't the only one subjectable to being taken over. A few days after her "It's pretty, it's all mine" incident, one of Mike's friends was on his way to visit, and he pulled in the driveway. And as he did, he had some other boys in the car with him. He looked over at the barn and started yelling, "Where are the horses?" Horses are one pet the Dandies actually don't have.
Holy shit.
He stopped the car and got out and took off running toward the barn, yelling something about that he had to go help Pa with the chores. The family got him calmed down and, snapped him out of it. And he said that he didn't actually remember anything after he got in his car to come to the Dandy's house.
Oh.
Yeah. It was after this that the Dandies got a call from the school. Beth had tried to jump out of a window in the girls' bathroom, and when she was unsuccessful at that, had tried to strangle herself in the chorus room. Yeah. It was 5 days after this that Clara, Beth, and Beth's new boyfriend, Tim, were sitting on the couch in the living room when Clara all of a sudden noticed that her daughter's eyes had once again changed to blue, and the girl began acting very much out of character. Okay? Shortly after this was New Year's Eve, and the kids invited a bunch of friends over to have a little New Year's Eve party. Somewhere along the lines, Beth had pulled a muscle in her back, so Clara gave her a muscle relaxer. Okay? After taking it, Beth began to act hyper, which is not how you act when you take muscle relaxers.
Very no.
Okay? She also began to tell some of the other kids that she had taken 10 muscle relaxers. A claim which Clara heard and then went to verify by counting what was left in the bottle and realized, no, she'd only taken the one. She didn't know what was going on. Beth, for her part, began to act pretty much coked out of her gourd, right? She was talking loudly, laughing loudly, and could not sit still. It was at this point that they decided to take her to the hospital, right? So they get to the hospital, and Phil goes to like grab her to help her inside, kind of half carrying her. And as they're approaching the door, Beth suddenly just goes limp. And she does it so suddenly that both father and daughter almost went down. Okay. Now, Tim, Beth's boyfriend, had gone along for the ride. And when he saw, her go limp and whatever, he ran up to grab her and help Phil, hold her up. And when he touched her, she went rigid. Like stiff as a board, rigid. So they get her into the hospital, they get her into the exam room, and it was like 1 minute she would be lucid and talking, and then the next second she would be completely incoherent. And Clara said it was like she was speaking a different language. Now, because of her earlier, claims and how she was acting and whatever, the hospital pumped her stomach, but they found nothing. They found no drugs in her system. They found no nothing. The entire time that this was going on, her eyes were blue. The next day, they released Beth to go home, and the doctor remarked on the change of eye color. Yeah. Yep. And things didn't get any better. One night, Claire heard the voices outside of Beth's window talking. And this time she heard them clearly. She heard them saying things like, "What do we do now? She's taking her to the doctor." To which the other replied, "It's easier when she's sick." Yeah. There was also another incident where, since Mike had been in a wreck and he was about to head off to college and things, Phil and Clara had managed to buy him a new car. Phil borrowed the car and was going to drive it to work and make sure it was safe and all that. And he was on his way home when he swerved to avoid a tractor trailer and wound up skidding off the road, flipping the car a few times, and landing upside down in a field. It's at this point when you got to figure either something is going on that's trying to kill these people, or they are genetically the shittiest drivers in existence.
Yeah, with the worst luck.
I mean, god damn. Now, with all this happening again, Father Al and Alex the Psychic came back in April of 74. And this time they brought with them some students from New York University who wanted to make a film about the haunting. Father Al attempted another exorcism where he had everyone kneel on the floor in the living room and hold hands. And Clara said that, Father Al kind of finished his rites and all that. And it was up to the film crew to kind of tell him when to stand up afterwards. They want to get footage and whatnot. And she said that they kept him there for like an extended period of time until like her legs were cramping and she was looking around and everybody else was like very uncomfortable. And the reason that the film crew just kind of made him stay put was because during the exorcism, they were recording screams and groans from outside. And they didn't want to disturb that footage. Now, after this, things once again quieted down like they had the last time Father Al and Alex had visited. Until the 7th of July, 1974, when the family went to Beth's wedding shower. Her and Tim were getting hitched.
Oh, thank goodness.
Now, Phil had to leave early because he had to go to work. So he went to the house to change. And when he went upstairs, What he saw stopped him dead in his tracks, because floating in the middle of the room was a book. And that kind of started things up again, because a few days later, Laura said she was being harassed by a black ball of fur under her bed. A ball of fur that had pointed teeth.
It's a Furby.
Furby from hell.
Or what's it called? Magua. Mogwai.
A Mogwai?
Yeah.
Mogwai.
Yeah. Half gremlin, half Mogwai.
Dust Bunny from hell. On the 19th, Clara became temporarily paralyzed in her bed.
Bell's palsy.
Possibly. This scared her. But when her daughter Mary called out to her, she managed to respond in a totally normal voice and just tell her daughter good night. Okay? The bouts of paralysis would continue throughout that night. She'd be paralyzed for a few minutes and then she'd be okay. And then it would come on again. She'd be paralyzed for a few minutes and then she'd be okay. And eventually it scared her enough that she called out for Phil, who was downstairs. When she called out for Phil, it woke up Mary, who came out of her bedroom and told Clara that the reason she had called out to her earlier, when she got told goodnight, was because she had seen a boy standing in Clara's room next to the TV watching her. But when Clara had responded normally, the girl figured it was just like one of Mike's friends or something, and they're talking to her, and had went to bed.
Assumptions are a dangerous thing.
Aren't they? Light, you bastard.
You know, now I'm gonna be afraid of more than just like spiders in my room. I'm gonna have a little fur ball with teeth underneath my bed.
Don't worry, buddy. We're coming to the end of this thing. The home stretch is in sight.
After this, I'm gonna send you one of the nightmares that I had. I have it written down.
Okay.
It has it has a lot of this story in it.
It's a very tropey story, honestly.
Well, like, it's got the weird stuff in it, like looking out and seeing something, but not feeling like you're either place or both places.
Mm-hmm.
And then the furry little thing with teeth.
Yeah, it's just a wild story, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll send you the story.
All right. You ready to polish this thing off?
So, yes.
All right.
I mean, I like this story. That's pretty fun.
No, we're winding her down now.
All right.
Now, things continued to fall apart for the family. They were hurting financially, and they had made attempts to sell the house, but were, for very obvious reasons, not successful, right?
What?
Pretty much everybody knew what was going on at the house, and
I'd buy that house.
Wasn't nobody interested in buying the demon house. In September, they were forced to file for bankruptcy and send Laura and Mary to Buffalo to live with Clara's parents.
Phil needs to pick up on ours.
The paranormal activity continued, even with just the two of them there, until finally on October 17th, 1974, Phil and Clara Dandy drove away from the Hinsdale house with no intention to ever return.
That's the day before my birthday.
Mm-hmm. So they finally got the fuck out.
Yeah, after almost 2 years, they finally used their brain.
It was 4 years.
4 years.
They moved in 70.
Oh, yeah, 70.
They moved in 70.
I don't know why I was thinking 73. A lot of this happened in 73.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, after they moved out, Phil, Clara, Laura, and Mary moved to California, where Phil had gotten a job in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 5 years after this, Clara decided she couldn't keep sustaining the long-strained marriage and filed for divorce.
Clara.
Okay. For their part, Beth and Mary both had happy marriages, right? And they were fine. They had some kids and whatnot. Clara moved to Oregon in 1990 when California living just became too expensive for her to handle anymore. Unfortunately, Laura, who, remember, had once predicted her own early death, had struggled most of her life with physical and mental issues. At the age of 31, she died of an overdose of her own prescription medication. Of the entire family, she had been the only one to ever speak well of or wish to return to the house in Hinsdale. Yep. Now, as for the house.
What about Mike?
You know, I didn't really catch what he was up to. He joined the Navy. I know that. And I assume he was doing well. I don't know.
Okay.
Now, as for the house, other people, of course, did try to make a go of living at the house, right? As you do. None of them, however, lasted very goddamn long. They would move in, move out. In fact, the first family that bought the house after the Dandies moved out was very vocal about talking shit about the Dandies and calling them liars. They didn't last 18 months before packing up and moving their fucking asses to Florida. Okay? The house still stands today, though it stands without permanent occupation. The owner, a man named Dan, has instead turned it into a place where people can schedule visits, of course, for money, and visit in hope of experiencing something spooky.
Benjamin, I know where we need to go.
I know, right?
My treat.
So there you have it. That is the story of the Hinsdale Dandy House.
It's fucking wild.
Fucking A, bud.
Sad to hear about Laura, but...
For sure it is, for sure. But not all stories have a happy ending, I suppose.
Was it her or Mary who was trying to jump out of the window?
That was Beth.
School? Beth.
Yeah. Who turned out fine. Yeah.
And that was the one that got the blue eyes?
Yep.
Okay.
Same one. The very same.
Crazy.
Yeah. That's a story. I don't know what to think of this whole thing.
I want to go there and find out.
I mean, right? There are a ton of YouTube videos
Mm-hmm.
of people doing investigations there, and they're pretty fucking active videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think New York's too far from me.
I'm pretty sure
I
Buffalo's
think it's like a 6-hour drive north.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's about all the further it is for me too, actually. You just got to go around the lakes.
Well, let's meet there.
All right, we'll have to do it. Do a podcast from the Hinsdale House.
That would be... Oh, you guys are in for a treat when this happens.
But all right, Jacob, I don't know about you, but this has thoroughly exhausted me.
Yeah.
This has been a marathon run. And if you have made it this far, guys, thank you so much for listening. And unless you have anything else to add,
I need to pee so bad.
I think then it's time to say good night.
Good night. Love you guys.